everybody. Can you hear me all right? Yes. Great. Oh, I'm so sorry that Cynthia Ozick can't be here tonight. I'm sorry she's sick, obviously, as I know we all are. I'm sorry. You know, I frankly don't often get a chance to appear anywhere with someone who could arguably be advanced as the smartest, most well-read living human being. And you know, I wanted to ask you certain questions like Henry James. I know he was a writer, but is he dead? You know, well, Cynthia and I were talking about this, and now Noreen and I were talking about this. It seemed that it might be a good idea to start off with a very brief synopsis of Washington Square Park, Washington Square, unless everyone knows it well enough that that is sort of extraneous. A quick show of hands, who would like to just hear very briefly what Washington Square is actually about? That's enough, thank you. I'll keep it short. Washington Square concerns a Dr. Sloper. We're never given his first name. As far as we can tell, his first name is Doctor and his last name is Sloper. And is the mic making weird sort of thumping and hissing noises that I could do something about? Or is my brain just making thumping and hissing noises? It's making weird noises, isn't it? Can we engineer some kind of system? Let's thank you. Let's try it that way. Dr. Sloper, who in a distinctly American as opposed to European way, is a medical doctor, but has accrued a considerable fortune and a certain social stature. He married a fantastic, charming, beautiful, vivacious girl of good family and some fortune herself, who died shortly after giving birth to their only child, Catherine.
No.
Catherine.
Second child.
They had a
Thank
son
you.
who died for...
They had a son who died. Thank you. Their only surviving child, Catherine. Oh, I love it that there's such Washington Square heads in the room. Their only surviving child, Catherine. Then whom a more sort of stolid, geeky, unpromising, ungifted central character for a novel is difficult to imagine. Catherine grows up to be precisely everything her mother was not. She's a sweet girl, but she's not conspicuously intelligent. She cannot seem to master or care to master social graces. She is no beauty, and as she grows to young womanhood, she has a marked tendency to show up in sort of extravagant, entirely too expensive gowns at parties, where she essentially sits like an animated hassock and contribute and you know in good naturedly contributes almost nothing. Dr. Sloper's disdain for his daughter and his fury at losing his wife and being left this sort of changeling child is palpable. And at a certain point, she is approached by one Morris Townsend, a 30-year-old bachelor of immense charm and beauty who has run through a small fortune of his own and begins to pay court to Catherine. There's little doubt in anyone's mind that Catherine's money plays some role in Morris's interest in her. It's a little hard to say if that is the entire extent of his interest or if it's simply one of the factors. But Catherine will is already in possession of $10,000 from her mother, which at the time, it's about 1850, it's set before James actually wrote it, which at the time is a sort of solid upper middle class, sort of set for life living. She also stands to inherit at her father's death another 20,000, bringing the sum total up to 30,000, which is like yahoo kind of money, which is wealth. And Dr. Sloper insists steadfastly, adamantly, and unremittingly that if Catherine marries Morris Townsend, he can't take away the 10,000 left to her by her mother, but he will not leave her the 20,000 or any money at all that she had come to expect upon his death. She refuses either to defy her father and marry Morris Townsend anyway, or to give up Morris Townsend, and things go on for years, really, in this condition, with Catherine sort of waiting for her father to finally give in. Morris Townsend sort of hoping that by his indefatigable attention he will convince the father that he actually is interested in Catherine for something other than that 30 grand. She ultimately suggests to him that if the worst happens, if her father really means it and disinherits her, $10,000 would really be enough. You could manage on $10,000 quite well. Morris says, my dear, how could I possibly live with myself if I was the cause of your tumble from wealth to near respectability, and finally breaks off the engagement. Catherine lives with her Aunt Penniman, who has been a sort of meddlesome, rather florid figure throughout, a sort of grotesque go-between Morris and Catherine. And ages into a not ungraceful, not in any way embarrassing, sort of dowagerhood. She comes to actually fit the sort of awful, too old for her clothes that she had affected as a young woman. She is a welcome fixture at parties. Her friends' children adore her. Young people start turning to her for romantic advice of all things, and she sort of matures into a maiden aunt. Until one day, some 15 years later, when Morris, who has I believe married or at least been involved with a woman with money who has sent him packing, comes back ready to settle for the 10. And Catherine has, in the meantime, had a couple of legitimate proposals of marriage from a couple of legitimate people, at least one of whom is a man with real money of his own. There's really no reason to imagine that these guys are after anything about Catherine but Catherine, and she has turned them down. She's married to her memory of Morris. So much so that actual 45-year-old Morris is no longer of any interest to her, and she sends him away, and in the novel's famous closing line, settles back down with her fancy work, her sewing, as it were, forever.
That was a wonderful synopsis. And I'm sure enjoyable to all the people who know the book very well. But one of the really interesting things about what you said is that Catherine is such an unlikely heroine, even for James. She's no Isabel Archer. No, she is dumpy, unlovable in some way. James, in a way, the narrator at least, if not James himself, is hard on Catherine. And yet, when I was reading your afterword for the Signet edition, you said what James could do so brilliantly in Washington Square, in his other work, was to see what might be remarkable in the pure, unvarnished humanness of someone who to all outward appearances seems ordinary. And he does this better with Catherine Sloper than he does it with any other character, I think, certainly better than he does it with any of the men in his books.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
You know, I think it was one of the great discoveries of well, first French writers like Zola and Flaubert. Though James hated Flaubert and would never acknowledge any even the remotest influence. I think we began with some of the French naturalists and continued through James to Woolf and Joyce and almost everyone since, in a rejection of the heroic hero, if you will, the sort of larger than somebody so much larger than life that he or she was actually large enough for a novel. And James in Washington Square, very much like Flaubert in Madame Bovary, though Madame Bovary is a barrel of laughs compared to Catherine Sloper. but these two great artists, and Zola, and then of course Woolf and James to follow in the next generation, really sort of revolutionized narrative by insisting via their work that there is no one alive, there's no one on the face of the earth about whom a significant novel could not be written. It's just that writers are paying insufficient attention to most people.